Nobody inside the paddock expected this test day to matter. It was supposed to be quiet, controlled, almost invisible. A routine development session tucked neatly between headlines, away from grandstands and television lights. Yet by mid-morning, the atmosphere had shifted. Screens glowed a little longer, conversations lowered in volume, and a familiar unease crept through the pit lane, the kind that only appears when something fundamental feels wrong or dangerously right. Because on that ordinary circuit, Yamaha had rolled out something they had spent years denying, delaying, and quietly rethinking. And at the center of it all was a rider many believed was too unconventional, too aggressive, too different to ever truly belong in MotoGP's most rigid world. Toprak Razgatlioglu didn't arrive to announce anything. He didn't need to. The bike did that for him. What unfolded over the next hours would ripple far beyond lap charts. It would disturb assumptions, strain internal hierarchies, and force the entire MotoGP paddock to confront a future it wasn't prepared for. And it all began with a test that wasn't supposed to matter. Behind closed garage doors, Yamaha's engineers moved with unusual restraint. The machine sitting on the stands carried no bold statements, no radical livery changes, no visible declaration of intent. But beneath the fairings was a departure that had been years in the making. A V-fit engine layout. A philosophical surrender, some would say. A quiet admission that the old identity, the inline-4 purity Yamaha once built dynasties upon, could no longer survive alone in the modern MotoGP arms race. Publicly, Yamaha had resisted this shift. They spoke of balance, rideability, tradition. Privately, they had watched Ducati rewrite the sport, KTM sharpen their aggression, Aprilia rise from obscurity. The writing had been on the wall long before this test day arrived. Still, unveiling a V-Fi wasn't the most destabilizing choice Yamaha made. Handing it to Toprak was. Within Yamaha, opinions had long been divided. Some saw him as a once-in-a-generation talent, a rider who bent physics under braking and lived comfortably on the edge others feared. Others saw risk, superbike habits, excessive rear lift, a style built on instinct rather than data. MotoGP, after all, punishes individuality when it strays too far from the optimal line. The test began quietly. Installation laps, conservative mapping, engineers watching not for speed, but for stability. Toprak circulated calmly, almost deceptively so. No theatrics, no visible struggle. Then the times appeared. At first, nobody reacted. Test timing screens are full of illusions. Track evolution, tire variables, fuel loads. Every engineer knows better than to panic early. But as the session progressed, something uncomfortable became impossible to ignore. The sector splits weren't fluctuating wildly. They were consistent, repeated, clean, and they were fast. The Yamaha V-Thut wasn't clawing speed on straights alone. It was gaining time under braking, precisely where Toprak had built his legend. Where others tiptoed, he attacked. Where most MotoGP riders danced delicately to avoid unsettling their prototypes, Toprak seemed to invite instability and then control it. The paddock noticed. Across the lane, rival engineers leaned closer to their monitors. Speed trap figures triggered quiet recalculations. Ducati personnel exchanged glances they didn't bother hiding. KTM staff adjusted headsets, asking questions nobody wanted to ask aloud. This wasn't supposed to be happening because the assumption had always been simple. MotoGP bikes demand conformity, stiffness, precision, a narrow window of operation. Riders adapt, or they break. Toprak's style, forged in production-based machinery with more mechanical forgiveness, was expected to clash violently with this world. Instead, it looked like the bike was bending to him. That realization unsettled Yamaha's own garage first. Telemetry began revealing patterns that contradicted years of internal belief. The VI's engine, braking characteristics, were stabilizing the rear in ways the inline Z4 never could. The aero load under braking, combined with Toprak's aggressive weight transfer, created a balance point that engineers hadn't fully modeled. This wasn't chaos, it was controlled violence, and it was repeatable. What made it worse or better, depending on perspective, was that Toprak wasn't chasing glory laps. His inputs were measured, his exits clean. On longer runs, the pace didn't fall away. If anything, it sharpened. By midday, whispers escaped containment. A blurred photo surfaced online. A partial lap time screenshot followed minutes later. Social media did what it always does: exaggerate, distort, amplify. But inside the paddock, nobody laughed it off, because they knew the numbers were real. The crisis point arrived not with a crash or a dramatic moment, but with silence. The kind of silence that descends when professionals realize something significant has just shifted. Yamaha staff stopped smiling. They stopped celebrating. Excitement gave way to calculation, because speed creates questions. If this VZ truly worked, what did that mean for Yamaha's existing development path? For riders who had spent years shaping the inline Zen 4 philosophy? For internal power structures built on continuity rather than disruption? Toprak returned to the garage without drama, helmet off. No fist pumps, just quiet conversation with engineers. His body language relaxed but focused, that to unsettled observers. This wasn't someone surprised by performance. This was someone confirming expectations. The twist arrived in the data room. Long-run simulations told the story everyone feared. Tire degradation remained manageable. Entry stability stayed intact, even as fuel loads dropped. The bike wasn't punishing Toprak for his aggression, it was rewarding him. In that moment, the narrative flipped. This wasn't a rider forcing a bike beyond its limits. This was a machine unlocking a rider's strengths in MotoGP for the first time. And once that realization took hold, politics followed. Within Yamaha, conversations turned cautious. Who controls development now? How far should the bike be shaped around one riding philosophy? What happens if others can't adapt? Management knew the danger of overreacting to tests, but they also knew the cost of ignoring them. Across the paddock, rivals recalibrated quietly. Ducati had built dominance on predictability and depth. Yamaha suddenly looked unpredictable, a dangerous trait, because unpredictability forces reaction, and reaction disrupts preparation. Media inquiries were deflected. Official statements remained vague, promising data, early stages, no conclusions. Silence became strategy, but belief doesn't need confirmation to spread. By the end of the day, the Yamaha VZ wasn't just a prototype. It was a question mark hovering over the 2020 Gen 5 season, a variable nobody had fully accounted for. And at its center stood Toprak, no longer framed as a risky experiment, but as a catalyst. As the sun dipped and garages closed, the paddock felt heavier, not because answers had been found, but because certainty had been lost. Tests don't win championships. Everyone knows that. But they shape confidence. They alter trajectories. They plant seeds, and this seed, once planted, couldn't be ignored. Toprak left the circuit quietly. No headlines. No declarations. Yamaha packed up without celebration. No bold claims. No leaked promises. Just a collective understanding that something irreversible had begun. Because when belief changes, the sport follows. And the MotoGP world, whether ready or not, had just been warned.